What's going on, everybody? So today I want to talk about something. I've done a few videos here talking about like progression and what I'm doing going forward for the updates and things like that. And today I want to go ahead and talk about something that I think makes zero sense. Now I'm a little bit late to this, to be honest, because from what I've read and interpreted from the patch notes, I believed it to be, or at least maybe you could say I hoped it to be a buff or something like that instead of a nerf. But after doing my own testing, because before I wanted to say anything, I wanted my own testing from solo and group play, because group play was actually super important in this, because some of the group play spots, even if you were to farm it solo, it would be nerfed. But if you farm it with a group, it actually doesn't change that much. So it's pretty cool to note, because some of these farms are actually something that I would actually use on a day-to-day basis if I'm able to get a group together. All right, so what we're talking about today is the fact that they mentioned this in the patch notes here. We have adjusted the experience efficiency of several areas in the Ashfield Cemetery and Mount Zavane zones to create parity across all zones. What they're talking about is they actually nerfed the spawn rate for some farm areas. Now I'll go over the ones that I've noticed, both solo and group reflections, and just really unfortunate, because I thought, okay, if they're talking about Ashfield Cemetery and Mount Zavane, there's only a couple farms I know that I would actually personally use on a regular basis in those areas. And then if you compare it to something like, for example, if I were to jump over to Realm of Damnation, this is just outclassing everything in the game. So what's interesting about this is, and they already know this, we've already mentioned this to them, so it's like, if you want to say, oh, don't mention it because it might get nerfed, I mean, they already know about it. So if they wanted to nerf it, they would have already done it. Which is very strange, because this is just absolutely the best two farms in the game, the Plains of Torment and the Hall of Punishment farms. These guys are significantly higher, about 20 to 30% higher than any other farm in the game. And I absolutely compare every single farm location that I go over on my channel to those locations, because they are the best. They are the best locations. And oftentimes what you'll find is, you don't necessarily want to go for those farms because it's annoying to farm in those locations. Also, shout out to Cerex. Love the videos. Thanks for mentioning it. But so I go for locations that aren't as active, because those locations are kind of annoying to farm. But the fact that they said we're going to nerf it to parity or change it to parity to other zones makes zero sense, because Ashfield Cemetery and Mount Zavane farms were actually on the average to slightly above average areas. If you were to nerf the farms that I'm going to go over, which they have, it doesn't seem like there's any reason to do that, because there's like a dime a dozen towards these spots, which I've gone over on all across my channel. In fact, basically every farm location I'm going to mention here is already done in a video more in depth on my channel. So they would have known that these spots aren't even that good compared to some other spots, which is a little bit awkward. So let's go over some of the spots that I've noticed here. First off is the Sanctified Earth Monastery. I'm actually going to teleport over here so we can actually walk the farms. Now, keep in mind, some of these farms are just screwed for both solo and group play, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, if it's not above like 70k experience per minute, then it's not good enough to farm, because the 70k experience per minute is below average. So you need to have at least 70k experience per minute for me to even consider for you to be able to be farmed. Now, in solo play, not every location can be used as a farm. I see a lot of people just saying any spot can be used. That's not necessarily the case. You have to make sure that the monsters will spawn in time for you to circle back around. Now, Sanctified Earth Monastery used to be one of those farms where you could farm solo, but unfortunately, you can no longer do that anymore. If I were to run around here, I'll demonstrate this one, and then I might just skip some of the other ones, because I just wanted to demonstrate it first off for you guys. But for example, the Earth Monastery here, you're going to run in a circle. It's very simplistic, and you just kill off all the monsters. Sometimes there's the shrine here, and you're going to want to pick that up, so just in case they spawn an XP shrine. But you can see here, very simplistic, and you could easily rack up very nice kill streaks here. So I'll just run around. We're about to kill the last group here. Okay, and there we go. We've killed it, and you can see here, looks like I left a couple of monsters around, but you can see here, if I'm running around and I'm just gonna keep running around in a circle, the monsters aren't really spawning at all. I'll just run in another circle completely around again, and I'll do one more lap just to go showcase that these monsters are really just not spawning at all. And that's a little unfortunate because normally you'd have a group spawning right here, and I know that I missed a couple monsters, but this group right here was actually completely killed, and you can see basically every spawn around here just doesn't spawn anymore. That's because they elongated the spawn timers. Now, if you're to run in here with a group, it actually comes back to somewhat normality. It's still not that good, but it does increase the spawn rate. And this is a really unfortunate thing for them to do. It's actually super obvious that they nerfed it, because this used to just be able to be farmed, right? We would have had a monster group spawning already, and we still don't have a monster group spawning in this area. So I'm a little disappointed in them for that. But that's one location. Another location on Mount Zavain, which I want to mention, there's actually two over here that I've previously gone over. First is the Zakarum Graveyard and this farm right here. Both of these, from what I could tell, have not been nerfed at all. Both are solid solo farms. One was by the unique boss monster over there, and the other one is like this little patch of 3 rocks that you would just circular around. Both those have not really been touched, which is a solid one. Another group farm, this is not a solo farm, but another group farm that I've found that hasn't really been changed. Oh, you can see someone's actually farming this location right now. But another group farm that hasn't really been changed is this spot down here at the very bottom of the map. If you farm in each of the 4 corners, one right here, one right here, one right here, and one right here, you actually have a solid 4-person kind of AFK farm, similar to the ship farm. I've found that that one actually is the same if you're farming a group. So it's not nerfing like the whole area, it's just nerfing for some reason the most popular spots, but the spots aren't even like that insane. Like the circular farm at Mount Zavain here isn't actually objectively one of the best spots. I've timed this solo and group, I've done the math on it, and it used to be about a 90 to 95k experience per minute with 3 to 4 legendaries per hour. If you don't have 90% magic find, it would have been 2 to 3, but that's not even one of the best. So I mean, it's above average, but it's not one of the best. Now, moving on to Ashwold Cemetery and the ones that I've noticed. First off, the ones that I use the most are going to be the Queen Asila's Tomb and the Ashwold Manor farms. This one, I've found that if you're solo farming, you no longer could solo farm it. You used to have quite a few spawns in kind of a circular pattern here. You could kind of go like around these staircases and then come back around. You no longer could do that. If you farm as a group, it's decent, but it's not amazing. The other farm, the Queen Asila's Tomb, this one, what I remember, you couldn't really solo farm this one anyways, but if you farm in a group here, it's going to be totally fine in terms of it does increase the spawn rates enough for you guys to group farm it decently fine. But again, all of these aren't nearly as good. I shouldn't say aren't nearly. It's just not as good as it was before, but it's still okay. And then we have one other one, which is the Spider Farm, which I actually don't remember exactly where that was. I believe it's going to be somewhere around this area. I can't remember. Actually, this is not the Oss area, but the Spider Farm, wherever that was, I've only done it once, and I never returned because I personally didn't even like that farm, but that one also is reduced as well, based on what I've tested. I tested it a couple days ago. So that's my thoughts. Those are the farms, guys. I don't know why they did this, to be honest. It doesn't make any sense to me. You could say, oh, well, they want experience to be harder to acquire, but it's not, because these are the farms that I wouldn't even use. Maybe for some players, but if you're talking about people who are trying to be absolutely as efficient as possible, this doesn't affect them a single bit, because guess what? If they were going to try to be as efficient as possible, they'd be ship farming when they're AFK, and they'd be Realm of Damnation farming when they're not. So to me, it's like, okay, why even do this? Because it doesn't affect the highest grinders. It only affects like the middling area, which are for people who aren't even the highest tier. So it's like, it's not even really that much harder to acquire these loots and stuff like that. Or you could just move to a different farm. Even if you were that person that was using these types of farms, you could just move to a different one, which I'll have a couple more going forward. And I have a bunch on the channel already, so you guys can check those ones out. But it just doesn't make much sense to me. So I don't know why they did it. And I'm just a little weirded out. And I think that they should just not do it in the future. So Blizzard, they listen to some of our feedback, but of course it's few and far between. Just don't do this. I don't know why they do it. It doesn't even make any sense, even if you are to consider them trying to make it more difficult for us, because it doesn't really. if you just know the farm locations on the map. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys want some more info on some new farm locations going forward, I've tested so many farm locations and I know what's going to be a good one, what's going to be a bad one, and I test it based on the math in terms of XP per minute, as well as legendaries per hour, and compare it to Realm of Damnation, and then do a comparison there. So if you guys want to check those out, be sure to sub to the channel, and I'll have maybe one or two coming forward in the next week or so, and I will see you all then.